in my day of growing my business, was a prolific email writer. I wrote an email every single day to my list.
Every single day?
Every single day. And can I tell you, I built a multi-7-figure business out of just writing an email every day. And I used to get up every morning with my cup of coffee and go, okay, what am I going to write about today? Now, this is where most people get stuck. Well, what the F am I going to talk about today?
What is it that you do right?
I talk about...
So in this episode, we're going to dive deep into how we leverage the data we currently have access to. Too often we see entrepreneurs and salespeople following the same follow-up process where they're not creating a well-crafted message. In this episode, we're going to go through how to convert our data we currently have access to through them taking inspired action to generate a sale. Today, we're fortunate enough to have the mastermind, Mark Blundell, who's going to run us through some specific techniques when it comes to crafting a 10 out of 10 email, a well-thought text message, as well as what dialogue to use on the phone to create a sale. So today we're blessed to have Mark on the show. Mark, I want to say a welcome to the podcast. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Dan. Great to be here.
Mate, I've got the first question for you. Mark, you've mentioned that most follow-ups are weak and ineffective. What do you see as the biggest mistake salespeople make when trying to engage their lists through emails, texts, or calls?
Well, I think one of the biggest mistakes is to keep doing what traditional sales training keeps telling you and reminding you to do. And the key takeaway from any sales training when you're talking about your list or your audience or your following, sales trainers and marketers will say, follow up for the purpose of staying top of mind. Now, I think what people lose sight of is they're not McDonald's. There are only a few things that are top of mind. When I go fast food, what do you default to?
Macca's, KFC.
Okay, so, well, we've got a split between two. And so people are under the illusion that if I follow up, I'm going to be like KFC or McDonald's and top of mind, which is absolutely misguided. Okay, if you've created an experience for your client where through some interaction, whether they've transacted with you or not, maybe they've seen a bit of content from you or they've decided to, join your email list or whatever, you've created an impact, right? If that impact was impactful enough, they will remember you. And so the necessitation to stay top of mind draws in an effort of energy that's going to yield a very poor result. I coach some high-performing, and I'm thinking about someone in particular, high-performing real estate agent. And he talked to me about making, I make 50 calls a day or a week. I can't remember whether it was one or the other, but it doesn't matter. And I said, well, what's the essence of making those calls? And he said, I talk to buyers on my list, sellers on my list, and I just check in. And I say, why are you doing that? And he said, well, just to check in to see if anything's changed. And I said, walk me through the actual conversation you have. And he took me through something that sounds like, hi, I'm person X. How you doing? Great. Everything going okay? Great. Hey, and they try and he was in the dialogue that he used, he tries and furthers the conversation that he might have had with them at the point in time at which they joined their email list. Has anything changed? No. But what a question to ask. Don't you think the person would have contacted you if anything had changed? So why did you waste the opportunity of the questions that you've got? Because these people are only going to give you a short minute of time, right? Why did you waste that opportunity asking such a lame question? Has anything changed? Or a question, he said, sometimes I say, if I were to find a buyer who would pay X, should I contact you? Right? And I said, okay, so what do you want them to say? And he said, well, it'd be great if they said yes. And I said, well, what would that give you? And he's thought it through. He's gone, yeah, you're right. What does it give me? Well, it gives me another reason to follow them up if I find a buyer prepared to pay X. And then what are you going to do? Oh, well, then I'll. And I said, so tell me, why are you doing this? And the answer was, because that's what the sales trainers say. And I said, hey, you are a high performing person. You need to look at every aspect of your capacity to make sales. You can only make sales if you communicate with people. So the quality of that communication needs to be outstanding. It needs to be thought about. It doesn't need to be a throwaway call, just touching base to check out how you're going. And so my point is, whether you're in real estate, whether you're a business owner, so many of them accumulate lists and data that they don't use effectively. And the reason why they don't use it effectively is because they have never explored or haven't even thought of or don't believe in their ability to influence, their ability to influence by communication. And so if we dial back to that phone call to a prospective seller as a real estate agent, we go, hi, Mr. and Mrs. Such and Such, I'm just checking in, see how you're going, just wonder if anything's changed, if I was to find. Instead of leading, influencing, creating a conversation that sounds like, do you know what? I've got a situation at the moment where in the last 2 weeks at my open inspections, I've been repeatedly asked by people if I could introduce them to a 3-bedroom house in this area, much like yours. And I have a problem because there's a lack of supply of those houses. And I'm ringing to let you know that these people aren't just kicking the can down the road. What they are looking for is a house that they can get into before Christmas. I know because I've spoken to them that they're qualified to 2.7 million. And I thought I would give you a call to ask whether it's worth having a conversation with you about that.
Wow, that's good.
Right. So that's how we can do it verbally. But we can do the same thing with an email or a text message. And that is the power of influence, the power of using an opportunity to be able to plant a seed in somebody's mind so that they take action in doing something like that. And so marketing, there's no point just marketing for the sake of marketing. There's no point creating reels just to create reels. Like, people would argue with me, but I'd be prepared to have the argument and keep going, to prosecute my point. If you're a real estate agent, sending out an email to your list, giving you a market date, 12 Smith Street sold for 4.2 million, right? So you send that to 2,000 people. What's their response going to be? Well, 12, people are going to go, well, great piece of information that. 12 Smith Street sold for 4.2 million. So what? How does that help you make any sales? How does it help them? I can stand underneath Centrepoint Tower and look up and gather a crowd and go, did you know Centrepoint Tower is 375 meters up there to the very tip? How does that help anyone? And I just made it up. So that's what I mean by ineffective communication. The goal of communicating is to move people. And surely you're in the business of making sales. You can't make more sales or you can't leverage the power of your list or the volume of your list unless you're suggesting to people outcomes that send off, if you like, a firecracker in the head of imagination that causes them to move. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so it sounds like going from picking up the phone to be front of mind to using strategically thought out dialogue or script that engages their emotions Is that the kind of angle you're talking about?
Absolutely. There's an old adage, and, as someone who often speaks at workshops and seminars, etc., and look, there's a lot of people that talk about my subject. I mean, there's a bucket load of stuff on YouTube about marketing, for instance. Okay? So the way in which I can make sure that the efforts of my message resonate with people is to move them emotionally. People will long forget what you said, but they'll always remember how you made them feel. And the essence of that concept needs to be dialed in, whether you're making reels, videos, sending emails to your list, sending text messages out, or making cold calls. If you can't construct a conversation with your intended target that moves them, then it's ineffective. And, I see lots of, and I know you've got a bit of a real estate following, I see lots of well-meaning agents who've been to some seminar where they've been told, you need to post daily. And their posts are, hello, everybody, I'm outside of 12 Smith Street, Smithville, which we've just sold for $4.2 million. Now, what does that tell the viewer about the service that this one person can provide? How does that communicate any unique, proposition to a potential client? Bottom line is, it doesn't.
So do you feel like people need to go straight to the point and go for a sale, or should they be nurturing and adding value to that list prior to asking for the sale? Like how does somebody impose influence to data through the current data they've got or through a reel? Like how does somebody actually influence somebody?
Okay, so what they do first is instead of trying to, I think when most people write an email, let's just say to their list, they start out with the intent of satisfying the complete audience. And so they look at it wrong to start with. They start out with the thought of, how can I write something that everyone's going to be interested in? And how do you do that anyway? And what is something that everyone's going to be interested in? Well, can I really communicate an event like the US has just changed presidents? Because that's what everyone's interested in. And here am I in my own little entrepreneurial business. Well, what's my equivalent? So I don't have something that is going to, entertain everybody. And so the starting point must be, don't need to entertain everybody. Start thinking about just a handful of people that I need to engage. And start thinking to yourself, well, for instance, if I had an email list of 5,000 potential or homeowners, and there's a potential of thinking, well, there'd have to be 3 or 4 people on that 5,000 who are having a conversation and had a conversation with their special other last night about possibly selling their home at some point in the near future. There'd have to be at least 3 or 5 or 20 on a 5,000 list that had that. Right? I write the email to those people with those people in mind. And it might start by going, I don't know whether you've thought about this, but from time to time, every homeowner thinks about selling their home. Is that you? Have you had a recent conversation? If so, I have something for you. And so this email then captures the attention of that avatar and speaks to the conversation that they're already having in their head. People think that marketing is about coming up with this bright new, incredible angle, story, or whatever that the prospect's never thought of, right? And tries to go, well, let me capture your attention and sell you something that you haven't even thought about buying. Do you know what I mean? Like, how hard is that? It's much easier to anticipate, well, what's a piece of conversation that this targeted customer's probably having in their mind? What are the challenges? What are the questions that are stopping them from taking action that I can write this email to and address? And when you create marketing content, whether it's an email or a video or a reel, that is intentional. I'm trying just not for the whole audience, but just for a select few so that I can get an extra listing, so I can make 5 sales today. Do you know what I mean? And so I, in my day of growing my business, was a prolific email writer. I wrote an email every single day to my list.
Every single day?
Every single day. And can I tell you, I built a multi-7-figure business out of just writing an email every day.
Is that right?
And what I did, obviously, through the marketing I did online, I grew an email list. And I probably had an email list of, 15 or 20,000. The number doesn't matter. It's the activity that matters. And I used to get up every morning with my cup of coffee and go, okay, what am I going to write about today? Now, this is where most people get stuck. Well, what the F am I going to talk about today?
What is it that you do, right?
I talk about yesterday. And I talk about an occurrence that occurred in my working day yesterday. So the email must always be a story.
Always be a story.
Always be a story. So I might start out yesterday. An interesting thing happened to me yesterday. I was on this podcast with this guy named Dan Beadle, and he asked me this question. He said, blah. And I thought I'd write to you today to ask, what would your answer be? So I would use whatever, a situation where I've spoken to a potential client and what their response was, a situation where I've made a sale, a situation where a client got a breakthrough, a situation where someone wanted a refund and I turned them around. And I would use these storylines, right, as the premise of my emails to people. They would always be story-based. Now, the reason for that is this. You know, Dan, have you ever heard of the adage, success leaves clues?
Yeah.
Right? So if I asked you, in your estimation, what do you think, what book would you say is one of the most popular, if not the most popular in the world?
The Bible?
Okay. And if we look at the Bible, what is the Bible at the end of the day?
A series of different stories, really.
That's it. And so that's what people relate to. People need to read stories. And when you're writing stories to that handful of people on your list, or creating a reel or a video or a short video sales letter or whatever you're doing, you have to think, I'm just talking to that person. And the best method of communicating in a way that resonates with them is by telling them an interesting story, right? And yesterday is always great fodder for today's story. Everybody who has to write an email had a yesterday.
Like the newspaper.
Everyone has a yesterday storyline. Like I could say to you, tell me what happened yesterday. And you go, I don't even know. Don't even know what happened this morning. And I might go, well, what did you do at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock? And there would be a little story there that you could turn into an email. So conveying your message through the use of storytelling is really important. Number 1. 2, when you're writing an email, it is so important that you create contrast and conflict.
Contrast and conflict.
Contrast and conflict. So let's deal with the latter first. Conflict. Everyone loves a good story where there's conflict, right? Everyone loves. This happened, and an outcome is alternate to the expected outcome, right? So I might be telling a story about an event that I had of enthusiastic entrepreneurs who came to listen to me when I was talking to them about how to put together video ads. And just I was talking about the importance of creating an important hook. This guy gets up in the back and says this. So I create conflict in my story. Okay, so number 1, contrast. contrast between the difference between the customer that you're targeting doing nothing and an outcome they could potentially achieve by taking action. If you don't articulate that in your email marketing, video marketing, or whatever, you don't move people because people like to take sides, right? And you want people when you develop this contrast, you want the contrast to be so obtuse, if that's the right word, so diametrically opposed to one another that they choose a side. And by choosing a side, they automatically come with the flavor of your email because they don't want to be on the dumb side, if that makes sense, right? So contrast is important. Conflict is important. Storytelling is important. And a call to action is really important. If you don't describe what the next steps are, they won't take them, right? So if you just leave it like, so if any of this resonates with me, give me a call. Like people just go, if you would like an outcome very similar to and you would like this, this, and this, then reply. And so this is the next bit. Convenience of reply to your call to action is so important. You've got to make that response as simple as possible for the person to do. If you go fill in a form, give me your name, give me your email address, go into my calendar, my online calendar, pick a time that suits you, pick a day, give me some more information about you. It becomes all too hard. You want to make it quick. If you want this outcome, just reply yes to this email and I'll get back to you. Like it's the best method of getting responses, if you like, if you're looking to create conversations with people. Okay, so those things are important. A call to action and a frictionless method of call to action is really important. So can you see that by thinking about all of these things in advance, the shape that our communication takes becomes very different to, I'll just flick out this email and just tell people, give them a market update. How much more effective? It's the same thing. You're still sending an email to your whole list, but now, right, you are bringing forward through the power of suggestion people who were sitting on the fence anyway, and you're intersecting into a conversation and dialogue that they were already having about their next steps.
So could you give us an example, Mark? Pick an example, like you're more than welcome to guide that. It could be real estate based on your previous business. Just an example of how you create a story that then converts to a call to action of them replying yes. Like, for example, myself, got a buyer's agency. How would I get somebody off my list to say yes to me taking the next step?
Okay, so you've got to understand that they are only going to be able to take the next step if they have a reason to take the next step. So you can either wait for their reason to occur, or you can create the reason. A shop, a retailer, right? You see Boxing Day, the Boxing Day sales, like outside the shops before the shutters come up, there's a whole lot of people queuing up. There's a reason why they're there, because the reason is getting a bargain. Now, anything they buy, they could have bought the day before, the day before, the day before, but there becomes a reason which causes people to take action. Okay, so as a buyer's agent, right, you know that those people are on your list because they've made an inquiry about one day potentially buying a home for them to live in, or maybe in your case, it's an investment property. So you know what their interest is. Okay, so what's the reason you're going to use that is going to bring them forward? Everyone wants a bargain. Everybody. Everyone wants something that is unique. You must create scarcity about your reason, right? If you're not at those shops at 10 a.m., the stock's going to be sold out and you're going to miss out. That causes people to take action. And so if you're a buyer's agent, what's the reason? Well, the reason might be that you've seen this pattern in a particular suburb where there's a group of people who are willing to sell at a price that is sub market value. For instance, there's a reason, right? So you might write in your email, something interesting happened yesterday, blah, 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 blah. And I found out there were 3 other people in the same block who wanted to sell units. These people are really motivated because there's stairs in the unit, right? Here are all the reasons why this unit is going to be easily rentable. It's close to a hospital, it's close to a railway station, it's close to a shopping centre, the infrastructure's great, blah, 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 blah. But there's a stairwell in it. And the current residents who want to sell are elderly and don't want to keep walking up the stairs and are keen to sell before their legs give out on them. If you're interested in an opportunity to get into an investment that's easily rentable, which means you're going to be able to get high yields, blah, 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 reply yes to this email. Creates a reason. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And so can you see now that I've dived in, if you like, into sitting down and thinking about what you're communicating first before just blasting it out there because someone said, you got to email your list, you got to phone call that list, or you got to put content out there every day on Reels. Thinking about what you're doing will produce an outcome that you're not getting at the moment. And what it will produce is conversations, inquiries, right? Not to everybody, but to the handful that you need to make the sales that you want to make.
Is there friction with emailing somebody every day from your experience, or did that work quite effective for you?
So some of my best campaigns were when I emailed people 4 times in a day.
4 times in a day?
Okay. So the normal method of thinking is, I don't want to annoy my list, right?
Yeah.
Well, what's the option for people who don't want to receive your email?
Opt out.
Right? People take an opt out or an unsubscribe so badly, it gives them a compound fracture to their ego almost, right? I've written emails that have said, if you don't want to keep getting any more emails from me, click this link. That's been the email, right? Because those people, I'm not going to get a sale out of them anyway. So what am I thinking I've got? What am I trying to protect? If I can't have conversations with people, then, the point of the email list is wasted. Number 1. Number 2, my emails are so entertaining, right? People can't wait for the next one. And so that day that I wrote, I was doing a Black Friday sale. So I was selling an online course, coincidentally, about building an email list. And one of the guys that I had working for me, John, who was my general manager of my business at the time, I wrote 4 emails about him flipping out, right, and telling me that I was ridiculous because I'd reduced the normal price of this course because of Black Friday, right? And through the course of the 4 emails, I created this storyline that I had to tell John to go home in the middle of the day. And the 3rd email was a picture of him, right, in his garden with a pitchfork in there holding his finger up. And so I made it entertaining in this whole storyline. And I sold more in that day from sending 4 emails in the day than I ever did sending 1.
Wow.
It's just a different way of looking at it. And so people have to question themselves, right? Where you go, I think sending an email per day, that'd be a bit much, wouldn't it? Well, where did that information come from? How did it get there? Who told you that? Who told you that? Right? Because your local television station doesn't take that attitude with the 6 o'clock news bulletin, right? They put one out every single day. Why? Because it's entertaining and it engages, okay? And I often challenge my clients and I go, aren't you the one that said you wanted to be top of mind?
That's right. Fair point. Fair point. So what would you say is the most effective out of the 3? An email, text, or phone call?
Well, it depends what you're selling, first of all. What is your goal? Are you trying to get an appointment in your calendar? Are you trying to strike up a conversation? Are you trying to sell something? Or are you trying to get someone to do something? Depends.
Yeah.
Like, are you trying to get someone to give you a referral? Are you trying?
Can we dig deep on that? How would I get a mortgage broker to give me a referral?
Okay, so it's a great question. Can I tell you, I did a lot of work with mortgage brokers, and through, the early 2000s and to up to about 2010, when the likes of companies like Mortgage Choice, Rams, Aussie, Wizard were really growing their brands, and mortgage broking was a real thing, really taking a stranglehold. So these companies used to get me to speak at their national conferences or their regional conferences. And back to my point about it's not your message, it's how you made them feel that resonates with people. And I'll come back to that point in a minute. But one of the things I used to talk about in my presentations was the power of generating referrals. And a mortgage broker would say, well, there's no point contacting real estate agents because they've all got their own in-house mortgage brokers. And there wouldn't be a real estate agent out there who didn't have a relationship with a mortgage broker. And so through my presentation, I'd go, who agrees with that? And everyone would put, real estate agents are a freaking waste of time, aren't they? Put your hand up. And then I'd walk around the audience and I'd come up and I'd go, g'day, mate, what's your name? And you'd go, Dan. And I'd go, Dan, do you have a good relationship with a real estate agent? You're a mortgage broker. And you'd go, yep. And I said, do you have one with a real estate agent where you're like that? Like there's no way anyone would ever penetrate that relationship. And I go, if you said no, I'd find someone else who did. Right? And you go, no. Him and I are this. We went to school together. So, okay. Now, how many people would call this real estate agent? No one, to get a referral. And I go, watch this. Do you mind if I call him? And you go, yeah, go for your life. And I would make a live telephone call in front of the whole audience. Now, people used to think I was amazing. What amazing courage to do that in front of a big audience, because far out, you could fall flat on your face. But I know that how to construct a call in a way where I was absolutely 99.9% sure I'm going to get a yes.
Wow.
Right? 99. So for me, it was a no-brainer, but my God, it looked like a great magic trick. And so I'd call this guy and because I knew how to structure the call, and I'd go, g'day, is that Michael? Yep. Hey, Michael, you don't know me at all. My name's Mark Blundell. I'm from XYZ Mortgage Broking Company. How you going? Pretty good. Now, Michael, I know that you've probably got a relationship in place with another mortgage broker. I'm not calling about that. I'm wondering if you can help me. So what's his answer going to be?
Of course. Yeah. How can I help?
From time to time, I have people in the area looking to buy an investment property. I specialize in working with clients who want investment property loans, and I get them approved. However, these pre-approvals go stale if I don't present them with a house for sale. And I was just wondering if from time to time when people go, can I buy, I'm looking for a unit in Smithville, whether I could refer them to you.
That's smart.
And I'd say,
that's really smart.
Hey, nothing. Right? And what was his answer be?
Fucking oath.
Okay. And of course, if it ever so happened that someone was looking for a mortgage, maybe you could refer them to me. What are they going to say?
Yeah, no worries, mate.
Okay. Excellent. Mate, do you mind if I set up an appointment, come and see you, da-da-da? Yeah, no worries. Book in the calendar. And then everyone would start clapping. But I'd go, because I haven't finished the call. And I'd go, while I've got you, mate, I'm looking for a really good conveyancer that I could refer these people to as well. Can you give me the name of the conveyancer you'd refer them to? And he'd go, yeah, Mary Smith. I go, great. What's Mary's number? Blah, 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 blah. Now, what I'd do is I'd go, and everyone would go, that's amazing. And then I'd ring Mary Smith. Hey, Mary, it's Mark Blundell here. How are you? Good, thanks. Hey, you don't know me at all, but Michael such and such from XYZ real estate agent told me to call you. Right? So you can see it's easy to get referrals. You just need to think about what you're saying. But most people do the wrong thing. Most people do what they learned at a sales training session, which is, hey, do you know anyone else who wants to buy something? No, I don't at the moment. Hey, look, if I leave you with a couple of cards, do you mind just passing them out to anyone who yeah, mate, no worries. Give me your cards. No worries. Now, here's the point. I've never been to a pub with anyone and had a conversation with them. Hypothetically, I might go, my car needs, some work. Where they go, hang on a minute, let me get my wallet. Here's this card from this mechanic guy. He's really good. Ring him. It doesn't work that way. And so people then go, salespeople go, well, I won't ask for referrals because asking for referrals doesn't work. Yet if they thought about what they were doing and choreographed their communication style so that they got a yes, right? They'd get greater results. Now, back to the original question, which was as a buyer's agent, how do I do it? There must be a win for the person in the request for a referral. So you start by going, what's a win I can give them that I can couch my referral request in that gives them this win?
That's genius. So, for example, I want to ask you two questions on this. A win for a broker could be that, like you said, I can close the gap between pre-approval and exchange. I'm solving a potential problem for them. Is that enough win, or would a better win be me giving them a referral?
No, a win. So I'm going to, if I'm a buyer's agent,
yeah,
and I'm looking for a referral from who?
A broker.
So you're looking for a referral of a client.
Yeah.
For a broker.
I'm looking for a broker to refer me an investor.
Right. Okay. Hey, Miss Mortgage Broker, how you going? You don't know me from Adam, right? Disarm people, first of all.
Yeah.
But the conversation tone has to be as though they know you. So I normally would start this call by going, is that Dan? And you'll go, yeah, who's this? Hi, Dan, it's Mark Blundell here. How you going?
Yeah, good.
Mate, you don't know me at all. However, so I let you down. You'll go, who is this guy? Should I remember? You don't know me at all, blah, blah, blah. But I'm wondering if you can help me. Yeah, what? So it's choreographed. Hey, mate, I'm a buyer's agent looking for referrals from a mortgage broker.
Yeah.
So I would go, hey, mate, listen, I don't know if you can help me or not. I'm a buyer's agent and I focus on selling investment properties, which are generally apartments on the Gold Coast in Queensland. I get a lot of inquiries around that. Now, sometimes I show people these units and they get excited about it, but then they go a bit soft on the idea because they think, I don't want to go through all the rigmarole of, filling in all the forms and qualifying for a mortgage and getting pay slips together, and then they lose their enthusiasm. And so I just randomly have grabbed you off Google. I've had a look at your website. You look pretty active there. What I'm looking for is a mortgage broker that I can refer these people to, right? Who can keep their enthusiasm going that I've been able to generate, who can get them across the line without making the mortgage application process too complicated for them. And so I thought I would give you a call to determine whether I could refer them to you or not.
That's good.
What's their answer?
Of course.
And do you see when I go back and said, when I used to do that in workshops, how confident I was, like I wasn't going to fall on my face, because what option does the person have but to say yes?
Yeah.
But
so
from the outside, it looked like a magic trick.
And so when you then ask for because you're essentially offering to give them a win in then giving yourself space to then ask for them.
Correct. And of course, so people feel obligated when you give first. Like that process of reciprocation is almost in the DNA of most people. Like you do something for someone, they feel obligated to do it. Like how many things do you do where people ask you to do something and you just don't want to fucking do it? It's just like the worst time, but you go, yeah, no worries, based on the fact that they've done something for you previously. We all do it. And so the process of giving first is so important in the process of generating referrals. However, we must have a terms of agreement. And so I go, and so I'd like to refer them to you. Of course, and if you ever came across somebody who's looking for a buyer's agent, looking for something else, maybe you could refer them to me. Oh, yes, of course. So I create the terms of engagement, and then I would go and see that person, right? And talk to them. Now, the unique selling proposition of me as the buyer's agent is me.
What do you mean by that?
So that gets me the appointment. Now, I want them to buy Mark, not what I can do, right? If they buy into me, they will buy into what I sell. Rather than what most people do is they try and sell what they sell instead of getting the customer to buy into you. You are the unique selling proposition. Heaven forbid, there's a gazillion mortgage brokers, real estate agents, buyer's agents. What defines you different? What? I got a greater market share. I run more ads. I do. Like, really? Is the customer really going to believe that? You have to impress them with who you are, your enthusiasm. Now,
did you have a framework when you got to that appointment to get them to fall in love with you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. There is nothing more infectious, right, to anybody than presenting as though you know where you're going.
Ooh.
People will just follow, right? So if you come in enthusiastic, excited about your business, mate, you know, I'm getting calls all the time. I have to tell people to go away because they don't have a mortgage broker. Do you know what I mean? Creating enthusiasm, but genuine enthusiasm about your love of your business. It becomes infectious. Do you want to deal with that person, or do you want to deal with the guy that goes, yeah, mate, being a mortgage broker now, who's just, you know, may as well have a cardigan on with a leaking pen in his top pocket. Like, you don't want to be that person when you... So selling people on you and your enthusiasm, which has to be genuine, not contrived, is the key. People will buy you, and then they will buy what comes with you. And what they will be doing is they'll be going, my clients would like this person, right? Because that's what they're projecting forward, that this guy's, you know, that I'm not going to get a call from the person I'm referring to and going, mate, that guy's a dickhead. Do you know what I mean? So that's what you've got to solve. And so these frames that I've described, right, they're just basic principles. If you rewind this podcast and write them down, right, and then look at them before you create any piece of content and go, well, these are the outcomes and the objectives to warrant the time and effort I'm going to put in of doing something so that it gives me a return on my investment of time.
Why do you think people don't spend the time to think about these things?
Because thinking is hard. People don't like thinking. Like, people like being told what to do. And the problem in my industry is people who can't do teach.
People who can't do teach.
Right? So in the main, it's not a blanket rule, but it's a majority rule. People who can't do teach. And so as a result, the people teaching have never done this. They're not getting up in front of an audience talking about an authenticated way of thinking differently, where they're communicating a storyline of their own success when they did this. They don't have a story. When I was an agent, and you've seen them, you've been to many of these training things where you go, mate, I don't think you're that good. You've never done it before. Do you know, where's your success? I've been in the mortgage industry for 2 years and I've been coaching for 7, right? It's like, what do you know? Have you ever, has this person ever felt what it's like to go hungry, right? Because if they haven't, they don't have very good sales and marketing ideas, because they haven't need to formulate them in order to stay alive.
Yeah.
They know the job, but that's it. And I think it's really, really important that if you're going to take advice and direction from anyone, you want somebody who has walked the walk, who can tell you what it's like when it's fucked, right?
Because it does get fucked.
Right. You want that person, right, who has figured out how do I get from where I am forward, because they're the smartest marketers. Always. They're the smartest marketers. They have lived on their wits and they figured out a way of putting across a conversation so that they could survive.
Mm. Sounds like you've had a lot of time, through experience, have thought about a lot of the answers to these questions and problems. From your experience through email marketing, text messages, phone calls, and any other mediums you've used, real social media, what's been the most effective way of communicating to create a sale?
Your capacity to paint a picture of a better place in the future.
Capacity to paint a better place in the future.
Right? Capacity to paint a picture for your customer of them being in a better place in the future.
And your way of doing that, irrespective of the platform, is the goal. That's the goal, irrespective of what method you use.
If I can't capture their imagination, what are they going to be motivated by? I can't guarantee an outcome because that'd just be bullshit. So I can go, but I can imagine being in a situation whereby, and you did. And the more detail that I can put around what the end outcome looks like, so it becomes easier for the reader, the viewer, to visualize themselves there. And if I can make it so good that it evokes emotions of desire, then I've achieved my goal. But one thing that will trump the emotion of desire is the cost of inaction.
The cost of inaction.
And so a lot of my emails might spend 10% of their time painting the picture and 90% of the time talking about the cost of inaction, because the cost will emotively weigh heavier on someone than the desire of the end outcome. So that gives them a reason to act. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Like if I could use a headline, the solution to the number one thing that keeps hardworking people broke. Right? So that speaks to the cost of not finding that out.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And so the cost of inaction and quantifying the cost of inaction is super important in effective marketing.
If I had a list of 2,000 people, what's the most effective way for me to create a sale this week?
As a buyer's agent?
As a buyer's agent.
5 emails.
5 emails.
5 emails, I could guarantee you will get a sale. In fact, 2 emails, I could guarantee you'd get a sale. To a list of 2,000, I could guarantee you that. Provided you were good when you talk to them.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you could back up the claims that you're making in your email, and it wasn't just throwaway bullshit. But all things being equal, yeah. 2, 3 emails.
Wow.
Yeah, there's no guarantees or anything. But if there were, categorically guarantee. You know, I have a client who is a very big on social media, has a very big following, and makes an offer through, he does big webinars, makes an offer at a certain price level and spends a lot of money on advertising to get people to come to the webinar. And then he does the pitch and then he makes the offer. And I'm just making up a number here. Let's just say he makes 50 sales as a result of that webinar.
Mm.
right? I can eclipse those 50 sales, right? All that effort, if he has a reasonable size email list, I can outdo his best sales practice by sending 4 emails.
Isn't that funny? Because you would have assumed that emails are dying.
Well, they are, because they're getting more boring. People are going, let's get ChatGPT to punch out a fucking email for you. And it's like, whoa, look at that. I'm amazed. But it's rubbish. It's rubbish. Like, as everybody knows by now who's had a fiddle around with ChatGPT, the value of the output is directly proportional to the value of the input.
Yeah.
If you don't tell ChatGPT to do these things, I need to evoke this emotion. I need to tell this story about that. Like, your prompt should be really, really long. That captures the essence of all of this. And you need to go to ChatGPT, produce 5 versions for me of the same thing. Now, that takes time, but you've got to know what you want as the end result so that you can command the instrument to perform and give you the results. And even then, it's tough.
Mm. You talk about the power of influence people have. What would you say we can do when people are on the fence to get them to
Talk about the cost of not doing anything all the time. All the time. 1. 2, tell them, I don't care whether you decide to do it or not. Right? Tell them that you are not fazed if they don't buy. Right? And tell them, in fact, if you're this, tell me now you don't want this.
What does that do to them?
Well, it makes them think. Like, if you think about, you've got an investor who's contemplating buying an investment property and you just can't get them to commit, right? Well, what do you like about it? Blah, blah, blah. Well, what don't you like about it?
Mm.
Blah, 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 blah. And you go, do you know what? I don't think you should do it. What's their answer going to be?
Why is that?
Well, you
What?
tell me. You should be able to answer that because you'd have told me I'm ready to go ahead otherwise. So you tell me why.
So it puts it back on them.
It gets them to think. Think. Because I can tell you, people who sit on the fence, right, from my experience, fence sitters are people who don't trust their own power of judgment.
Mm.
It's got nothing to do with your pitch or your offer. It's got to do with them.
So I want to give a live example. I had a sign-up meeting, a listing appointment, a conversation with a prospect where they agreed they would sign, but have delayed it because they need to speak to their accountant or this professional that at the time's not aligning. How would you influence that person to get that deal signed?
I'd be saying, hey, if you really loved this, none of those things would have been an impediment, would they?
No.
So what's stopping you? Okay, so Dan, you've got to take responsibility here. You're listening to what they're saying.
Mm.
And I'm not saying they're being dishonest, but it's not the real reason why they're not going ahead. And without the real reason why they're not going ahead, you can't solve their problem.
Mm.
So they will stay sitting on the fence. So what is it? What is it? Hang on, I've done this. So it's important to go, I've done this for long enough to know. And I've got to know you. I don't know you really well, but I got to know you a little bit through chatting. I get a sense that if you really wanted this and you were scared of missing out on it because someone else was going to buy it, none of those things that you articulated would have been an impediment. Would that be fair? So what do you think's stopping you from going ahead?
Mm.
Without the information, you can't solve the problem.
Mm. So it's really just getting deep into
Absolutely. Yeah.
the right answers. So when it comes to the follow-up process, what are we doing wrong that if we change today would get us one step closer to getting a deal done?
Okay, so in summary, in terms of all that I've just talked about, right? Follow-up. What's the purpose? Right? Who are the people I'm trying to talk to? what is the problem I can solve for them?
Mm-hmm.
What has stopped them taking action on their own? And does my content solve that problem? That's it. Phone call, email, text message, video, ad, post, or whatever. You apply that framework to what you're doing, you will create far more effective communications that will yield the results that you want your communications to yield. They, at the moment, you might think are impossible.
And it would block out the noise of a lot of the times we post content for the sake of posting rather than, like you said, creating a specific form of communication that gets the desired outcome.
That's right. 100%.
Mate, how would we learn more? Like, you've given us a good summary. How does somebody get to learn more?
Well, a lot of people say I'm a bit hard to find because, I have a handful of clients and private clients that I deal with, so I don't do a heap of marketing anymore myself. But if you go onto Instagram and type in Mark_Blundell, you will find me. I am not the race car driver. I'm the other guy. And don't believe the race car driver that is my brother, because he's not.
I love that. Well, mate, thank you so much for your time and insights. I know that I personally got a lot of value out of it. What would be your best piece of advice for somebody that is in that stage of wanting to take things to the next level from either a marketing or sales perspective that you could share to wrap up?
Well, I could wrap it up in one sentence. If they don't implement some of the things we've talked about today, the answer is always no.
Well said. Well said, mate. That was incredible.